Good to be with you all in community this morning. It's good to see your shining faces. If you feel comfortable, please share your video. Today we will be having a community circle, so it's a great time to participate if you feel comfortable doing so. My name is Aparna, and if you're new here, we will be beginning our session today with an opening invocation, which is a prayer to our teachers and the knowledge that has come before us. So I will share the prayer, and please join me. And we'll follow that with a definition description afterwards. So Om Narayana Samarambham Vyasa Shankara Uttamam Shanti Prakashaya Adimam Ayodhya Nataya Madhyamam Shunyacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. What does this mean? We're saluting, giving salutations to our whole Vedic wisdom lineage, starting with the ultimate divinity Narayana, which we know by many names, but Brahman, Ishvara, Narayana, many names, but that ultimate divinity, followed by our excellent teachers who have given us these Vedic scriptures, the Acharya and Shankaracharya. These are our lineage, some of our lineage acharyas, and Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, is the author of this text that we are exploring, Bhaja Govindam, and many other texts. Followed by the teachers of the scriptures, Shanti Prakashacharya, and that is someone that we know as Badi Baba, who is Acharya Shunya's biological great-grandfather, and also you may see him right here. He came first, followed by Ayodhya Natacharya, and that, as you've read Acharya Shunya's books, is Baba, and that is her biological grandfather, but also the Acharya of our lineage. And continuing up to our immediate teacher, Acharya Shunya, known as Shunyacharya in Sanskrit, and that is our beloved teacher in the present today. This is important. We'd like to orient ourselves to where are we getting this knowledge from and how are we receiving it and what are we receiving? So these opening invocations are a wonderful way to sort of solidify ourselves into this present moment. What are we exploring? And that's going to have a lot of relevance for today's community circle. So before we begin our discussion, how about we all keep getting settled into this present moment? Let's take some time and take a nice deep breath in. Find your comfortable seat. Get settled in. We're here now. Let's take some nice, deep, slow breaths in through the nose. Gently out through the nose. Feel the breath as it crosses your lips. As you inhale gently, deeply, feel that breath infuse you with life. Release any stress or tension that you may have temporarily been feeling. In this moment, We are safe. We are here. We are in a beautiful community together. Community of truth, satsang. The next few moments, minutes, an hour, we have this opportunity, this moment to connect with this knowledge, to contemplate it, to ponder, to churn this wisdom in our thoughts, in our words, in our enlightened vulnerability, in our shares. This process of churning, this mananam, this process of contemplation, helps us to take this knowledge and begin to make it our own. Today, in this session, we're going to take all that powerful brain activity, that active mind that serves us during the rest of our samsaric life to build this dream. We're going to take that active mind and turn it towards another focus. These beautiful minds coming together, deeply contemplate this truth. Thank you, mind. Thank you, thoughts. Thank you, capacity. Today, imagine picking up those reins, picking up the reins of your senses, drawing them back, harnessing that power to understand, to know. Take another nice deep breath. Release. Gently rub your hands together. Feel the warmth on your hands. Gently place those hands over your eyes. Slowly open your eyes. Looking at your palms. Come back, come back, come back. Bring your hands into prayer position. We come together in service to one another, in service to light, in service to knowledge, in service to truth. Jema. It's good to be together. So I thought a good discussion today would be about the last verse that Acharya Shunya taught, and I will review it for you. We last discussed verse 23. And in this verse, Acharya Shunya said that she referred to this verse as a toolkit, that we can look at this verse and listen to this verse and see it as a toolkit for our own enlightenment. So in this verse, verse 23, and I'll go over it in a second, but in this verse, it is reminiscent of another verse, verse 8. So that verse has some of the same questions to ponder. So I thought a great experience today will be kind of to go through verse 23 and see what it's asking us to do, how we can take that as a toolkit. What does that mean for us? Ponder what that toolkit is, what those questions are, and together we can maybe shed some light on some ways that we can begin to use this as a process for our own contemplations, so that we can start to really churn this knowledge and really make it our own and maybe get to these deeper truths in a way that is experiential, in a way that really makes sense to each of us in our own life. So I'm going to read verse 8, and actually I'm going to read verse 23 first, and I'll interject some parts from verse 8. And the verse 23 is, I'm going to read the English for now. Verse 23 says, "Who are you? Who am I? From where do I come? Who is my mother? Who is my father?" In verse 8, these kinds of questions are also echoed. In verse 8 by Adi Shankaracharya says, "Who is your wife?" Meaning, who is your spouse? Who is your son or daughter? Of whom are you? So we have a lot of questions orienting us around our relationships in this, right? So this is what I got from this is immediately um, we see ourselves being asked these questions, start to ponder these questions. So we're told in verse 23, we're given all these questions and they relate to this verse 8. There's some more of these questions. They're all about relationships. So then we're told, and this is where the toolkit comes in. And I'm just going to read the whole verse then, is ponder thus, look at everything as essence less, and give up the world as an idle dream. All right, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about this toolkit. Let's ponder these questions. First of all, let's ponder the questions. Those questions, and Acharya Shunya gave an entire discourse on the last class around these questions and how these questions show up in text after text. These are the core of the Vedic. This is the core of the Vedic questioning, the core of the Vedic dialogue, and the core of the truth of what we can offer and what we can receive and what we can connect to. So if this is a toolkit for enlightenment or a toolkit for mukti, then we're being asked, as I see it, we're being asked first these questions of relationally, who are we in the world? So let's ponder those questions. And then where do we come from? Who am I? Where do I come from? And then we're told that this samsara, we're starting to see something here, right? We're starting to see a samsara, this world, the world of samsara. It's strange, verse 8 says. And then we're asked to ponder. So if we ponder all of these things, we're going to come to a conclusion. So let's start pondering those things. Did anyone have any, basic, let's start with the basic relationships. Why are they asking us? And this is both the Adi Shankara Acharya and his students in this text. Why are they asking, who am I? Who are you? Where do I come from? Who is my mother? Who is my father? Who is your wife, your spouse? Who is your son? Of whom are you? So to me, first thing that says, of whom are you? Am I only in, again, we're asking, like we identify ourselves in a relationship. There's a lot of like, I would identify myself as a wife, as, I was a daughter. I'm not a mother. I am in service. I am a student. I'm all of these things, but is that who I am? What does it bring up for you? And feel free to unmute yourself.
Jay Ma, good morning, everybody. Morning where I am. The thing that comes to mind for me with that question, Aparnaji, is all the different roles we transit through in our lives in any given moment in our lives, and the key word being transience, right? So they're temporary roles that we take on. Some feel more weighty or permanent, like I am a mother, right? I was a daughter, so that's a role that I have shed, similar to you. And so it's really easy to grab onto these roles and think that that is what we are in existence. So that's the beginning of my contemplation.
Yeah, the role itself, yeah, that these identities, even as I said it, and just as you said it again, I was a daughter. So that was I thought that was a permanent role. And then when your parents pass, then you realize, oh, I'm actually not a daughter or a son anymore. And so even those things that we hold so closely to our self-identity, oh, that is transient. Yeah. It went away. What other, so those aren't permanent. Did anybody else feel Maria, I see that you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I also, what it brought up for me was these different levels of reality and cultivating a bit of a separation from these roles, not in terms of apathy, but in terms of stability and equanimity. So saying, we get so identified with these roles, but they are at this relative reality level of samsara, of the world, of the bodies and minds and emotions and ego and intellect. And this question really, makes it I ponder of like, okay, who am I? To me, it signals, beyond these things, right? He's asking us to really say, is that all that we are, right? And so to reach deeper and to say that no, there's this unchanging, this steady atma that isn't flickering, that's behind that, and regardless of whether we're in a relationship with this person right now or not, that we're also connected at this deeper level, this deeper absolute reality level. And so for me, it starts to bring up this little bit of space of cultivating that separateness from those identities.
Yeah. Yeah, separation. So we're already seeing some of the toolkits starting to happen, right? Yeah, some of those tools are starting to work. Elizabeth, would you like to share?
Good morning, everybody. Dima. Um, I really appreciated the question and who are you? And then kind of the list form, as I felt it was a list of all my attachments.
Yeah.
And as I heard them, it brings tears to my eyes. It actually felt like surrendering them, like bringing them up, noticing them, and letting them go. And as I say that, I also notice that my role as mother, daughter, student really deepens when I surrender it. So it's this kind of circle, like I am a daughter who detaches from my daughtership, or I'm a student who detaches from my studentship. And so it's really, I loved it. It felt like a poem to my heart.
Um, this idea of what Elizabeth just brought up, that just sparked something. This idea of what we're most attached to. In earlier verses, we were asked to let go of even like even the clothes we wear. So there's all these material attachments that came before, and now we're getting into this nitty-gritty of like, oh, actually, what Elizabeth just shared is this our deepest attachments. Where are our deepest attachments? So how do we most closely identify? Do we most closely identify? And there's the fact that this is coming up in several verses. What do we so relationship is something that we most closely identify, it appears to be. We think in terms of becoming detached, oh, I'm unattached, and we think of it in terms of things and objects and clothes and nice cars and all this, because we right now in 2024 we're living in a very consumer oriented material society. But actually, when it comes down to it, those very close attachments are, they really are rooted in relationship. So it's a good reminder of even those close relationships. Is that who I am? Something else that came up in that question for me, of whom am I? Of whom are you? Who do you belong to? And is that who you are? To me, that instantly brings up thoughts of tribalism. It brings up thoughts of identification with religion and party and nation. And so there's this, of whom do I belong? Is that who I am? What does that bring up for you, Maria?
This actually reminds me of Shunya ji had posed this question at some point during a satsang, and I thought that the answer, initially I thought it was going to say, belonging to Ishvara, and then I was thinking, well, we are Ishvara, our Atma is one with Ishvara, and so maybe just because that was kind of in my mind thinking of the way she answered that question, but I remember she had said that the response was that we belong to Sat, we belong to truth. And so that just kind of came to me, and it's like now that's something to ponder again at that ultimate, at that the level of ultimate reality. Like what how does that manifest now? What does that result in thinking of that we belong to truth?
Mm. Ishani.
Yeah, that wording, of whom am I? When I hear that, when I question that, it brings up a lot of freedom, because I think a lot of our conditioned thoughts, our behaviors, what we think we can and can't do, what's allowed, not allowed, what's approved, unapproved, comes from people who we subtly feel like own us in some way, or we belong to in some way. Um, and so to be free of that um, is freeing. Yeah. So it feels like it's a tool maybe to unbox possibilities, unbox choices. Yeah.
Did anybody have any, does anybody have any fear come up at the thought of not identifying as belonging to a group, or even not belonging to a society, or not belonging to your partner? or not belonging to your children or to your parents? Does that bring up can anybody imagine some anxiety or fear? How does that land with you? What if you don't belong? Yes, Parisa.
Hello, everyone. Um, I'm so happy to be here. I just want to mention this first. For me, it brings up some anxiety um, in the form of the amount of the responsibility that it it arouses in me. It opens it opens up a lot of freedom, and that freedom, to me, at least at this point, is rather scary. That's it, just that I need to think about it more.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. I think this text is also, Bhaja Govindam is also called the Moha Mudgara, and it is about, it's like and that means a hammer of our illusions. It's going to knock away all those illusions, and I think it's important to recognize that it's not comfortable. It's not, if it was comfortable, we would release all of these identifications and just be done with it. If it was easy, we'd, well, okay, got enlightened in the morning. Great, ready to move on. So I think that's an important thing, and an important part of contemplation is really, let's get into those discomfort and those uncomfortable feelings, because that's where we're holding on. That is our identity. That is where we can feel unmoored, as we start to explore this. So thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability there. I'm sure you're not alone. I promise you. All right. Jayanti Maranella.
Jai everyone. For me, this whole Bhaja Govindam so far has been, I remember at the very beginning, Acharya Shunya said that this was going to be painful, tough, because like you just mentioned, it's a hammer. It really breaks all the attachment, and for me, it really pushed me to realize and uncover all these major attachments that I had that I was not aware of. I thought, I was just totally unaware of. And now I'm beginning to see shall I say, the results of this process where I've been looking at all these attachments. And I've also come to realize that I had some, I want to call them traumas, not so much as physical traumas, or because I didn't have an abusive mother or an abusive father, anything like that. But there are more traumas related to my upbringing, the way I was brought up. And I was brought up with a lot of fears, because my mother was a very fearful person. And now doing this major work, looking at my attachment, who am I touched the most? What am I afraid of losing? One thing I realized that for me, there was this major fear of abandonment, of being alone, being left alone. And I kind of elaborated and looked at that, and I really found where it comes from, where it stems from, this fear of abandonment. And it was this fear of abandonment that made me get more attached in relationship, super attached. And now I feel like I'm able to detach to the point that sometimes I question, I go into this, I don't call it crisis mode, but into this questioning, now am I being too much, meaning that it's hard for me to explain it. Sometimes I question, is this a word in English, carelessness? How do you say it? When it seems like you don't care at all? And I've questioned this with my daughters because I love my daughters. I mean, they're my daughters, but I'm not that kind of mother that is possessive and attached to them. Like, I want them to be free, what they want to be, who they want to become. And I mean, obviously, I'm available to support them because I am the adult. I have this responsibility still. But I don't have this morbid attachment. Like, my mom was really, she had this morbid attachment with me, which it always felt uncomfortable to me because somehow I wanted to be free and do my own things, but at the same time, I needed that approval from her. And even if I did it anyway, there was always that sense of guilt in me. And so now with this Bhaja Govindam, I'm looking at all these, I call them traumas because they create something, they modify something, even at a subconscious level. And this is helping me uncover all these things and detach in a way that I feel good. I don't feel guilty. There's like someone just said, this sense of freedom to be who I want to be and go back to my true self. And so this is also helping me overcome all these fears that I had, including the fear of death, because I was always like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. You know, I want to stay here a little longer because what's after this? I don't know what's after. There was always this doubt. And I mean, this big question, who am I? I mean, this is a huge question that at times can be very unsettling because it really destroys all we believed it was true, like relationship, being, you know, the mother, being the daughter, being whatever, you know. And now what's left? You know, if we erase all that, what's left? And that's the big question. Who am I? So, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let me just share a few things that came up in the chat for those of you who are tuning in after the live session. We have some thank yous, Parisa, for raising this idea of not belonging as an increase in responsibility. And that's something also to think about, is that actually is, you know, on the one hand, we look to, oh, the world tells us that if we let go of this identification, then we're not being responsible, but actually we're being responsible to a higher truth. So that's another thing to contemplate. We also, Parisa, also liking that connection of freedom and responsibility. Another share for Jayanti that it resonates so much with another person, that understanding that the fear of abandonment can cause us to become hyper attached. Yes, so seeing where our fears are helping to continue and actually increase our moha, our confusion about what is real, is something that we can begin to start to explore. And that by contemplating these things again and again, by going into these and seeing where are we holding on? Where are those pain points for releasing? Where are those identity, those parts of us that really hold on to different parts of our identity? And then we can start to see how it actually informs our actions every day. Yeah, another thank you for bringing up the fear of being alone. That idea does come up for this person with the idea of not belonging to a group. Yes, fear of being alone. So who is alone and who is together? This is part of this question. Are we ever alone if we are all one? That is the fundamental truth of this, is that we're all one. Are we ever really alone? Thinking on that is, then which part of me feels isolated? That's the core, right? Which part of me is feeling separate from this thing of which we are all this, we are all that, I am that. Another person shares this concept of belonging is a key driver in samsaric reality. In her profession, supporting people with belonging is a central strategy for healing relational wounds. There's even something called the Othering and Belonging Institute that focuses on these concepts in society. It's all making me think of that question of whom do you belong? Challenges us to make that separation from temporary states of belongingness. Yeah. Do we really belong to something if it can change? If we can, what is belonging to? Uh, and Marcus shares that she experiences it as a sort of neutrality that comes up more often instead of the attachments I encountered in previous time. And yes, what is next? What is next when we begin to this is getting into that toolkit part. let's figure out what is next. So we're asked to ponder these questions, these identity questions. Our relationships, are we our relationships? Are we our spouse? Are we our mother, our father, our daughter, our son? Are we our our tribe? Are we our religion? Are we our political identification leaning? Of whom do we belong? We're asked to contemplate all of these things. We're also asked to contemplate, where have we come from? From where have you come? Think on that for a second. Where do we come from? And is that part of our identity? Rochelle, I see you raised your hand.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say the question is, what is the whom question? It is asking whom, not what. So that makes me think to think longer on whom do we belong? Because it might be easy to jump to what do we belong, to get past whom do we belong. But if it's asking whom, it chooses the words very perfectly. So I'm just contemplating for myself, do I just need to stick with whom at the moment, because that is the question, not what. And what does that mean? Because it's easier to jump to past the whom. I guess that's what I'm just wondering at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah. Atmajoti, would you like to share?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Choppy on my end, and I couldn't tell if it's my computer or the larger setup. But first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for these questions. It's so rich. And I think one of the things that brings me back to Vedanta over and over and over again is this exploration of that tension.
Atmajoti, you just cut out.
Aparna, you might, if he comes back, you might suggest he turn off his video, because sometimes that helps to just with the sound.
Sure. Atmajoti, I'm going to pause you. I'm going to mute you here for now. And if you want to turn off your video and come back, I think that would be helpful. Arjuna, would you like to? Arjuna,
Yeah, but he just came back.
I'll try again. If it cuts off again, please just move on. I'll try to get it out quick. Basically, just this tension between the eternal and the ephemeral. And I think I'm sitting with this question, when you asked, does it produce any anxiety or discomfort to imagine not belonging? And what's coming to mind is sort of what it means to belong to earthly groups. And though it may not be the forever eternal truth of who you are, you belong to an earthly group that is marginalized in some way, or you're existing at an intersection of marginalized groups, and feeling as though that identity and that belonging is actually a question of survival. It's not just a sort of, contemplation. It's a question of survival. So just wanted to name that and just say that I know, there's others who sit with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important to recognize is that we're talking on multiple levels here, right? So there is, and always, and I think this is important to recognize is that all Vedic teachings and all Vedic teachings of truth come from a place in which Dharma is the single most important way that we navigate through samsara. So if we remember that, this is not, there's no place in which we are asked to exist in the world in a unhealthy, isolationist, negative, punitive, racist, sexist, genderist, like in no way is that being asked because that's not Dharma. So there is the way in which we walk in the world, and every Veda has the Dharma Kand that has that part of the Karma Kand, is that part of it which teaches us how to walk in samsara in a healthy way. And then and even this is not absolute truth. Even, it doesn't mean it isn't really experienced. These relationships are real in samsara. These identifications are necessary in samsara. And yet we're also being asked in this other way. Is there another way in which we can hold lightly in this other manner, only in relation to our identity, only in relationship to our deepest knowledge of who we are? So in absolute truth, yes, we do exist. We do exist in these relationships. We actually our lineage is a grahasta lineage, which means that we are a lineage in which all of our teachers exist in relationship. And so, and we're asked also to, earlier in this very text, to keep in satsang, to keep in community of truth. So our relationships are important, and the quality of those relationships, the quality of the sangha, the community in which we keep, is important. And in this society, in this world, there are safer relationships and communities to keep in contact with. There are relationships and communities which support our growth and support our freedom. And so I think that is an absolute important aspect to bookend with Atmajyoti's share, which is yes, yes. Yeah, this whole text came with, remember the imprecations of be in satsang, be in satsang. So be in right community. And sometimes that right community looks one way and sometimes it looks another, but it's in the right community that helps us to nourish our deeper contemplations, our safety, our health, our community, so that we can do this work. So absolutely. Yeah, it's a both and, as Amadjoti shares in the chat. Yeah. We have another few shares in relation to Amadjyoti's share. A thank you for naming that piece, and also intersectionality of belongingness and identity as it serves as a key safety mechanism for marginalized people in samsara is a contemplation that Janya churns consistently. Yeah, how do we, there's both and. We're not being asked to reject healthful ways of existing in samsara. You know, this also exists within an Ayurvedic and yogic asana context. It exists within all kinds of community relationship. But in this, we're also asked to also have a hold with an open hand these identities. That's what the contemplation is asking, in my mind, is asking us to do is to hold. So do we hold so tightly that we're stuck in that identity? Or can we also see that that's an identity within role, within a larger context? Yeah. Arjuna, did you want to share?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I came in late. We're in India now, and living next to an Ayurvedic hospital, which we've come to for the last 15 years. And I'm about to start Panchakarma on Monday. Just a bunch of things come to mind from this discussion, looking at that verse. One of them is that the doc, and also based on what Parna just shared, that a doctor here that I respect greatly once said it so succinctly. He said, either you're living in an I world or a we world. So, which, like, it's that simple. And along with that, something that Acharya Shunya cleared up for me some years ago. I never really understood Dharma. I always saw Dharma as this right work, but I never really got it. But she said once, Dharma is that which sustains. And I think that just helped me so much. How you sustain yourself, but in the context of a we world, that you're sustaining yourself so that it's actually a service to the greater good. So how you sustain yourself, how we sustain ourselves for the greater good. So then, on the subject of eternal and ephemeral, it's like it's all eternal and it's all ephemeral at the same time. So, but yet it's really all eternal. So, I've gotten so much from Ayurveda being that we're all part of nature. We're as much part of nature as the cow that's sitting outside of our house, who makes the loudest moo that I've ever heard in my life, as the mud and the birds and the peacocks and the plants. We're just part of nature. And Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, we create, we sustain, and then we dissolve. And then we're dissolving always into this I don't really have the words for it, but it's something that's certainly a whole lot greater than I am. And the other thing is my wife listens to Ram Dass a lot, and she shared with me something where he says, like, we're in a spacesuit. This is a spacesuit, like the soul, the uh Brahma, Atman. It's all this whole equipment thing is a spacesuit. We're travelers, and how we can make this a better world in everything. So, and what I'm finding in terms of this verse particularly is that um the work is more and more every day of just coming back to the present moment, like just coming back to the present. When I find myself thinking about something that happened 10 years ago or is going to happen, I just exhale and ground myself, and I'm back in the present moment. All of that just goes away. And all that's here, right now, and how I can be as responsive as possible to that which sustains. So, yeah. I mean, I say a prayer every morning to my mother and my father, the people who birthed me. But, who is my mother and my father? To me, it's much greater forces that I don't have the words to describe. And I feel fine about that. So I'm really glad to be here, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Arjuna.
Welcome.
So we've been exploring then. So we've actually, this is great. This is a great lead into the final verse, the final part of this verse, which is we've just done a lot of discussing about how to navigate samsara, how to be in samsara in a positive way, how to sustain ourselves within samsara, how to sustain others in samsara, how we support and nurture ourselves in this dream. But we see in verse 8, he calls it this In verse 80 says, strange is this samsara, this world. And then in 23, ponder thus, look at everything. So all of this samsara, look around you, look at all of this samsara, the good, the bad, the loud cow, the happy group, the joyful parts, the negative parts. Look at all of this. Look at all of this as a whole. This is where the toolkit comes in. Now look at this. Look at it as though it is essence-less. Everything you see, everything you look at, it has no substance. It has no permanence. All of our right actions, all of our right relationships, even these two, whoosh, they change. They're impermanent. The toolkit is to then, we're given in all of that confusion, to give up this world as an idle dream. Looking at the world, the first part of that is look at it as though this is essence-less. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? To me, it meant disillusion, like essence-less, like it doesn't have it's not real, it's dreamlike, it's disillusion. What does it mean for you if we look at this world and see it as essence-less within a dream, what is it like if you're in a dream? We've all had this experience, I'm assuming. Has everyone had the experience? Raise your hand. Has everyone had the experience where they're in a dream and they actually, within the dream, you know that you're experiencing intense emotions? You're sad, you're afraid, you're crying, you're laughing, you're flying, and you're feeling trepidation, or you're this or you're that. Who's had an emotional experience in a dream? Yes? Everyone has had some kind of emotional experience in a dream. As soon as you become aware of that emotion, what happens? Do you stay in the dream? Or do you kind of come up to surface level, right? You come like as soon as you become aware of your emotion in your dream, you can choose. We can kind of choose to go deeper. There are times where I'm like, everything's fine. I'm going to go deeper. But in some level, we're coming up to a different experience by becoming aware of our emotions. We become more awake. By becoming aware of the dream, we begin to wake up. Now we can choose to go back into the dream state sometimes, but it's never the same because we've become aware of that dreamlike state. What does it mean? What is the point of an idle dream? What is the point of going back to sleep? Svara, you had already raised your hand, so if you want to share based on earlier contemplations, feel free. Or this.
Hello, everyone. I guess I just wanted to say, as it was coming up on my heart, that it feels like this is sort of laying the foundation for just really being able to live in a more dharmic way. And you named that before, and that was coming up for me the whole time as you were speaking. Just kind of clearing out the need to be overly overly attached in this world, and it just sort of creates just enough spaciousness that we can say, oh, I know my role. I can recognize, it feels like it's sort of it's designed really nicely for us. If we can understand that something is, that there's sort of a separation between this experience in Maya and, and understand that this is a dreamlike space, then there's just an ability to um, be the observer that much more, and that feels like such a benefit to us, for that to be elucidated for us, and just to know that's my role. My role is not to be overly entangled here. What it brought up personally is, I'll share just one thing, is that and I think many people have this. I have a challenging relationship with my mother, for example, and have felt throughout my life a lack of a, a tricky thing around attachment with her, and maybe a lack of ability to feel closeness, or a level of abandonment. And this just sort of gives me permission to say, that's okay. It's okay that I don't have this sort of perfect experience with my parent. It's okay, this perfect experience, meaning my parent is somebody who loves me in this certain way, who shows up for me in this certain way, in this sort of idyllic way that we sort of put forth, how our relationships should be. And so it just, anyways, it feels very empowering to me. It just feels like it gives this permission to say, it's okay if this relationship isn't perfect. It's to say, okay, if that relationship isn't perfect, what's really more important is how I relate to that. And that's really all it is how I am relating to that idea. And more importantly, how I am relating to all of this across the board. And it feels like freedom, in a certain sense. That's all I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, freedom has its positive and its and its negative feelings. Freedom can evoke, freedom in samsara evokes both of those. It's freedom. We're free, and that's we're free from the bondage of our, in this case, we're given like this freedom from bondage of our own identity, freedom from the bondage of like who we think we should be, right? All the shoulds can go aside because we're looking to find out what is the deeper truth. Yeah. We have a few shares in the chat. Swara, supporting you. Yes, what does perfect mean and who gets to define it? Yeah, this is part of these are the questions of identity, and identification with is how closely we hold on to something, right? Our identification with something is how close we hold on to, and how much we're grasping onto our identity. And we really do that in relationship. Along the same lines as Shani shares, I find that the more that I see the world as a dream, the more decisively I act, the clearer I communicate, the more I separate and let go of the world, the more efficiently and skillfully I act within the dream. Yeah, let's talk about more of that dream, that dream quality. If we realize that this is a dream, this is the toolkit. We see that the question is, who am I? The question is around our self-identity. And then if we look around us, and all these things that we thought gave us identity actually are essenceless, they are not substantive, they are as a dream. And then we can see that it is this idle dream. And so then that gives us this opportunity to choose. Why do we choose to be in a dream? Why are we choosing to stay asleep? We are aware. We know that we've been given the information. We've been given the stimulus. We've been given the knowledge. So what is the point of staying in the dream? Why are we holding on? And I'm sure that's individual for each of us, so no one has to come up with a definitive answer for that. You can share if it's for you. What is causing you to hold on? And we've already heard, fear, um, anxiety, and also around responsibility and obligation. These are some reasons why we've been holding on to our dream that we've heard today. Anyone else? Yes, Jeremy.
Hello, good morning, everybody, or evening. Yeah, it seems like a lot of this text he is talking about all the ways we hold on to the dream, all the ways, right? And a lot of it, like you said, is fear, and a lot of it is desire, and a lot of it is moha, right? And and he's also pointing at there's a sense of urgency throughout this text that I'm seeing. There's a sense of urgency. It's like all these things are what's keeping you in samsara, essentially, is what he's saying. But take refuge in satsang, right? Here's a lifeboat for you, right? And this is the way to the truth. And if you see everything as a dream, then all of it is pointing to the realization of Atman, right? And he's like, that's the task at hand. Everything else is a distraction, and the more you desire or fear, right, craving and aversion, right, the more stuck, more entangled you get into the dream. And I guess I'm just where I am now is like, okay, I can have an intellectual understanding of this, right? I can have an intellectual understanding of this. I can have an intellectual understanding of Atman, right, and Brahman. And it seems like he's pointing to the ways to have a deeper understanding of that. And I guess I'm just wondering, how deep of an understanding do we have to have, right? What more do we have to remove? If you do have this intellectual understanding of things as essenceless, right? And I'm just wondering, like, is it more contemplation? Is it continued studied with satsang and teachers, and experience, and sort of retracting from walking the path without letting the entanglements, the vines creep up and grab your arm and hold you back, right? How far do we have to go? How much do we have to, understand? That's where I am now.
Yeah. So immediately what I want to say, what pops in is, for me, my the strong intellect, as all of you do as well, the strong intellect that wants to know, and where my messaging is coming from is my emotional reaction and responses. So that often informs me more. So impatience, my own impatience at coming to the end of how much longer, is a really good tie back in of, oh, well, I'm not there yet. Okay, got it. Like my fear. Oh, okay. Okay. So exploring the emotions for me is a way in which I really start to test that intellectual understanding. So I have the intellectual knowledge. Okay, I've heard. Yes, I've heard. I've been hearing. Yes, yes. Atman, Atman, Atman. Yep, pretty sure I got it. Okay. So then this is how Mananam works. So how do we contemplate? Well, contemplation isn't just Mananam it's a churning, and churning doesn't mean a surface like read of it. And yes, I've thought very deeply. Churning is I'm getting into the muck of it. I'm pulling it up from the bottom, and I'm seeing what's out there. I'm lancing the boil. I'm watching the pus emerge. I'm seeing what's happening. It is Mananam, this deep churning of the waves of samsara, of our ocean of knowledge, with the ocean of knowledge. All of this is like it actually, this is why it's a hammer, right? Because the keys, the touchstones are those places where we're not even aware that we're identifying. We're not even aware until we're challenged with the uncomfortable situation, until we're challenged with those parts of ourselves that don't like, that maybe get impatient or want to come to the end, or, it's not in my calm that it's not in my calm that I have really gotten to the root of it. It's after getting to the root of it, the calm emerges. So I think that that's what I would say is how long? Well, as long as, because it points back to that piece that you were saying, which is that raga and that dvesha. Where our emotional attachments are where we are holding on. It's where we have aversion. It's where we have desire. It's all, so yeah, keep digging into that muck, and we'll see. Because when we really wake up, then it is, and we see that it's a dream, then we're no longer in the dream. And that is a profound space that we have, I'm sure, have all had glimpses of. And it doesn't mean we blip out of physical existence. It means that we are no longer enmeshed in that dream because we see it for what it is. So I kind of think of it as we take this dream, last satsang, Shinji talked about the states of dream and waking, and that there are these 3 states, and we're in this waking dream. And so those of us who have been exposed to this knowledge are in a waking dream that's you're a little closer to that surface of waking. This is the beauty of this. We're closer and closer. We're almost there. We might be hearing a few sounds as we're snuffling under the covers. We're very close.
You promise, Aparna.
I promise, keep that focus. In this lifetime or the next, it'll come. 100%. Catch me next time. See. All right, we have a few more shares in the chat. In answer to what are some of the reasons why we might want to hold on to the dream, John just shares inertia, safety, fear, rewards for clutching. Yes, this world, especially right now, gives a lot of rewards for clutching on tight. Delusion, yeah. And Maria shares, I think forgetfulness can also play a role as to why we hold on to and are stuck in the dream. We have experienced so many lifetimes before hearing this knowledge, and there's so much of deconditioning of our minds which we need to work through. This remembering of our ultimate nature as Atman is a new habit that we are reforming, and it takes time. I 100% agree. Smriti is that quality of memory. So it's the part of our mind that remembers. And many of you have shared that when you first heard this knowledge, it was like you had always known it. You remembered it. So this is part of why we come back to satsang. We hear it again and again. It's to remind ourselves. And as Maria says, it's to form a new habit. We keep reforming this new habit. And eventually we will spend more time in our new awareness, remembering, than we do outside of it. Gayatri shares, for many, it's the only way we knew until this knowledge leads us to a contemplation that then leads us to a different way of looking at everything. Yeah, if you don't know what you don't know, if you haven't yet been reminded. Soham shares, this is a great contemplation. I've been using my conscious awareness and recall of the truth while I am amidst challenging circumstances as a measure of my own progress. Yes, continuing to intentionally remind ourselves. You should see I'm a post-it queen. I have intentional reminders, but my intentional reminders aren't do the laundry and take out the trash and do that. My intentional reminders are, I have given you your intelligence. Use it to come closer to me. My intentional reminder is, there's all these is about sankalpa, and so I have these intentional reminders, and I surround myself with them because it is so easy to forget. That's the nature of Maya. It is this illusion. It's all geared to helping us to forget. That's the name of the game. Keep coming to satsang. Yes. How much longer, Marika says to that, I recognize the impatience which fades away when coming back again and again to the truth, staying in satsang, even with not so much effort or existment in the mind, finding peace with the big when. Yeah, let's find peace with the big when. When's it going to happen? When? Jema. It can happen in an instant, or it could take a couple lifetimes. Sakshi shares, for her, there must be some deep, deep samsara habits that keep me in the dream. Being with these teachings helps to dissolve these habits little by little, and then I believe what is true will arise in my heart. Yeah, yeah. Arjuna shares, for the Sufis, the operative action is remembrance. Freud says, we repeat until we remember. And Parisa shares, thank you everyone for sharing your insights. This has been very illuminating for her. And that's why we're in satsang. It's been beautiful to be with all of you today. That was a rich, deep churning. I'm so glad we had this time together. Please join me. Oh, by the way, next Thursday is Thanksgiving in the USA, but we will be having our session. So we'll have a bright and early session, which if you are celebrating with family, you might find this is a perfect experience to have before engaging in more of these samsaric relationships to orient yourself. So I welcome you and encourage you all to come next Thursday morning with Acharya Shunya. Beautiful. Let's share our closing prayer. And in this prayer, we are asking to be led from untruth to truth, from darkness to light, from our belief, in this, that everything is mutable and changeable and temporary, and we're all going to die in this world, to this nectar of a realization that we are eternal, that we are Atman, that we are Brahman Ishvara. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. Jai Ma, everyone.